Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So in this video, me and my partner will present about Hajah, Tanzilu, Manzilah, Dharurah, Amatan, Khasatan in Islamic banking. So first of all, the definition. The definition of Hajah, it means the need. Meanwhile, Tanzilu, Manzilah meaning proportional representation or fair treatment. Meanwhile, Dharurah, Amatan, Khasatan meaning universal and pressing requirement. So it prioritizes first, focus on treating customers fairly and refraining from charging interest, which is riba. Second, the importance of honest and fair dealings in the financial sector. And third, alignment of Islamic banking principles with Sharia law. So, the role of Hajah, Tanzilu, Manzilah, Dharurah, Amatan, Khasatan in Islamic banking is it emphasizes on meeting the lawful requirements of individuals and enterprises, providing equitable and just financial services to clients. So, the objective of Islamic banking. First, socio-economic growth and justice. Then, creation of an all-encompassing and accountable financial system. Last but not least, it is to meeting the needs of individuals, enterprises, and society as a whole. So here's the research objective. The first objective is to study how Islamic rules and regulations are used in the banking sector. The second objective is to identify the key qualities and situations where this Islamic banking idea can be used to address urgent requirements. The third objective is to evaluate how the Islamic banking idea is incorporated into banking services and products. The fourth objective is to examine the ethical and legal aspects of this Islamic banking concept, including its alignment with Islamic values and potential challenges. And the last one is to provide suggestions for improving the implementation of this Islamic banking idea, including practical strategies, recommended policies, and also the guidelines. Then, the methodology. This study used an extensive approach to gather data Hajah, Tanzilu, Manzilah, Dharurah, Amatan, Khasatan in Islamic banking. We collect information from a wide range of sources, including various relevant secondary materials, original sources like doctoral dissertation, and academic journals. We refer to reputable sources such as the Journal of Sharia at the University of Malaya and ResearchGate. Additionally, we also explore online resources like blogs and other publications. We compare and analyze different aspects of Sharia compliance in Islamic banking, including terms, concepts, conditions, and also procedures in relation to Hajah, Tanzilu, Manzilah, Dharurah, Amatan, Khasatan. Online websites, especially PhD research papers and journals from the other university, are heavily relied upon convenient sources of knowledge and are widely cited. Then, as for literature review, we discuss about necessity in Islamic banking. Necessity or Dharurah is an important concept in Islamic banking. Then we discuss about rule of fatwa in Sharia law. Fatwa, a legal opinion from a qualified Islamic scholar, plays a vital role in Islamic banking. Then we discuss about the exceptional measures in Islamic banking. First, debt restructuring, then emergency liquidity support, and the government interventions. Then we discuss about scholars' perspective and debates, which means Islamic scholars have diverse opinions regarding the application of necessity in Islamic banking. Last but not least, we also discuss about the practical implications and challenges.
So next for finding and discussion, firstly the condition of Hajah, Tanzilu, Manzilah, Dharurah, Amatan, Khasatan in Islamic banking. Firstly, there must be an immediate and absolute necessity that cannot be avoided by any other means in order to invoke the doctrine of necessity. There should be an immediate problem that, if not addressed, might cause significant harm. With this stipulation in place, we know that only the most dire situations will need the use of extraordinary measures. In order to increase liquidity or maintain a stable financial system, it may be necessary to temporarily loosen some regulations. Second, the next need is one of proportionality, which states that the extraordinary measure must be appropriate to the emergency at hand. This This involves picking the course of action that will address the need while causing the least amount of harm or breaking the fewest rules. The idea of proportionality assures that the extraordinary action taken is not disproportionate to the misery being alleviated. For instance, if a bank is experiencing extreme liquidity restrictions, it may take extraordinary steps like borrowing from traditional banks so long as the amount borrowed is capped to a bare minimum in order to avoid further financial distress. This guarantees that the measure is not overly restrictive and is only implemented when absolutely necessary. The third need is that the extraordinary action is only in effect for as long as it is needed. The legality of the special measure will lapse when the extraordinary circumstance no longer apply. This stipulation helps keep the Islamic banking system intact by preventing the extraordinary action from becoming routine. If a financial institution forms a short-term alliance, or in other words, musyarakah, with a more traditional bank in order to weather a temporary financial storm, it must ensure that the musyarakah is dissolved after the storm has passed. This prevents the extraordinary action from becoming the norm and allows the bank to resume operating in accordance with Sharia principles. Fourth, all reasonable alternatives must be explored thoroughly before drastic action is taken. The urgency of finding halal or permissible solutions to the problem is highlighted by this circumstance. Extraordinary steps should be considered only if no other acceptable halal solutions are available. In the event that an institution is unable to raise enough halal capital through the use of Islamic financial instruments, it should actively pursue other options such as utilizing Islamic liquidity facilities, forming profit-sharing arrangements, or looking into other forms of ethical financing. The bank should only resort to extreme measures once all other options have been exhausted. Fifth, no willful disobedience. The extraordinary measure should be pursued with the goal to reduce harm and meet the requirement, not with the intent to disobey Islamic law. Taking this kind of extraordinary action should be motivated simply by a desire to ease suffering rather than by any hopes of personal gain. Those in authority must show that they have a genuine desire to meet the need and respect the principles of Sharia while making choices about extraordinary measures. Finally, it is a good idea to get the opinion of experts by consulting with respected academics. Islamic legal scholars, which is fiqh, must confirm that the extraordinary action is in accordance with Sharia. Professional advice is useful in establishing the scope and limits of the extraordinary measure in light of Islamic legal principles. When it comes to questions of adhering to Islamic principles, Islamic banks will typically form Sharia advisory boards of committees made up of knowledgeable academics. Using the principle of Dharurah, these jurists assess whether or not extraordinary actions violate Islamic law. In Islamic banking, the conditions of necessity as a basis for exceptional actions must be carefully considered. Proportional and adhere to ethical norms. Dharurah is a Sharia compliance structure that allows for leniency in the face of exceptional circumstances. By adhering to these requirements, Islamic financial institutions can make sure that extraordinary measures are used in a way that is consistent with the tenets of Islamic banking. Next, for the procedures used to maintain Sharia compliance in Islamic banking of necessity as a justification for exceptional measures. Sharia compliance is fundamental to Islamic banking since it assures that all banking and financial dealings are conducted in accordance with Islamic principles. In order to remain in accordance with the Sharia, Islamic banks adhere to a set of rules and regulations. The following are some of the most important aspects of ensuring Sharia compliance in Islamic banking. Firstly, Islamic banks appoints a Sharia supervisory board made up of Islamic experts versed in both Sharia law and finance. The SSB is in charge of checking the bank's procedures goods and services to Sharia law. Secondly, internal and external Sharia audits are performed often by Islamic banks. The bank's own Sharia compliance team handles internal audits, while third-party Sharia auditing organizations handle external audits. All aspects of the bank's operations and transactions are reviewed to ensure they adhere to Sharia law. Thirdly, Islamic banks provide a number of services and products that adhere to Islamic law or Sharia. Interest or riba, speculating, gharar, and other unethical practices are avoided by using these goods. Islamic savings accounts, Islamic financing, including murabahah, ijarah, and musyarakah, and takaful, are all examples of goods that comply with Sharia law. Fourth, Sharia screening. Islamic banks perform a Sharia screening process before providing any financial product or engaging in any transaction. This requires an in-depth analysis of all relevant assets, businesses, and contracts to guarantee adherence to Sharia law. Any parts that don't meet the standards are tweaked or taken out entirely. Fifth, Sharia compliance training. Islamic banks regularly educate and train its staff to ensure they understand and adhere to the principles of Sharia. This assures that all personnel participating in banking operations have the education and training necessary to uphold Sharia law. 6. Fatwa and rulings. Islamic banks consult the Sharia Supervisory Board for guidance on a wide range of issues by way of formality drafted legal opinions known as fatwas. These fatwas shed light on controversial questions of Sharia law's applicability to grow challenges and complicated financial dealings. 7. Sharia compliant investing principles are the ethical investment criteria that Islamic banks adhere to. Investments in sectors associated with haram activities such as gambling, alcohol, and pork are restricted under these rules. Last but not least, for conclusion, to conclude, the significance of Hajah, Tanzilu, Manzilah, Dharurah, Amatan, Khasatan in the field of Islamic finance cannot be overstated. This principle, which can be translated as necessity determines the rules and regulations, highlights the adaptability of Islamic banking procedures to meet the demands of individuals and society in various settings. Sharia principles, which govern Islamic finance, place a premium on acting with integrity, fairness, and social responsibility. Hajah, Tanzilu, Manzilah, Dharurah, Amatan, Khasatan is consistent with these principles since it allows for deviations from the norm in extreme or time-sensitive circumstances where the protection of vital interests is at stake. Conventions such as interest or riba and speculation, gharar, are forbidden in Islamic banking. They do, however, recognize that economic settings are in constant flux and that pragmatic approaches are necessary. Islamic banks are able to respond to unforeseen circumstances and satisfy the immediate requirements of individuals and businesses thanks to the interpretive latitude afforded by Hajah, Tanzilu, Manzilah, Dharurah, Amatan, Khasatan. This guideline allows for some way, but it is important to find a happy medium between doing what is necessary and violating Sharia. It is the responsibility of Islamic financial institutions to safeguard the concepts of Islamic banking and ensure that any exemptions granted under this concept do not undermine these principles. In conclusion, Hajah, Tanzilu, Manzilah, Dharurah, Amatan, Khasatan is an essential idea in Islamic banking, allowing Islamic financial institutions to adapt to and respond to unforeseen circumstances in a Sharia-compliant manner. Islamic banking is constantly developing and expanding its range of ethical financial products and services to meet the growing demands of consumers, businesses, and communities.